The first thing I noticed after the accident wasn't the cast. It was how quiet Hayden had become. That felt impossible, considering I'd known him for almost 6 years. If someone asked our friends to describe Hayden Carter in one sentence, every answer would sound the same. Loud. Not obnoxious. Just impossible to ignore. He talked with his hands. Laughed at his own jokes before anyone else could. Turned every grocery run into a 40-minute adventure because he'd somehow end up talking to strangers about barbecue sauce or football. Silence never suited him. But when I picked him up from the hospital that Monday afternoon, he barely spoke. He sat carefully in the passenger seat, his right leg wrapped in a bulky brace that stretched from thigh to ankle. One arm rested in a sling, and there was a fading bruise across his jaw that looked worse under the gray November sky. "You don't have to drive like you're transporting explosives," he muttered after about 10 minutes. I looked over. "What? You've been going 5 under the speed limit since we left. I don't want to hit another pothole." He stared out the windshield. "I've already had 1 accident this month." That should have sounded like a joke. Instead, it landed somewhere between exhaustion and resignation. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "Sorry." He shrugged. Neither of us said anything for another few miles. Rain tapped softly against the windshield, the wipers moving back and forth in a rhythm that somehow made the silence louder. Eventually he sighed. "My apartment's on the 3rd floor." "I know." "No elevator." "I know." "My doctor says I shouldn't be doing stairs for at least 6 weeks." "I know." He finally looked at me. "You don't have to keep saying yes before I even ask." "I wasn't planning to." His eyebrows pulled together. "What?" "I already talked to your landlord yesterday." "You what?" I explained the situation. "You did that before asking me?" "I figured you'd say no." "I would've." "I know." He let out the smallest laugh I'd heard from him all day. "There he is," I said. "Don't get used to it. I'll take what I can get." He shook his head, but there was something different in his expression now. Not happier. Just less empty. After another minute he asked quietly. "So, you were serious?" "About what?" "Me staying with you." I glanced over. "Did you think I was kidding? I thought you were being polite." "Hayden." "Yeah? You've known me since college." "Unfortunately. When have I ever offered something because I was trying to be polite?" He thought about it. "Never." "Exactly." He leaned back carefully against the seat. "My place has stairs." "I know." "My shower isn't exactly disability friendly." "I know." "I work from home." "I know." "You snore." "I do not." "You absolutely do." I breathe confidently. I laughed. He actually smiled. Small victory. The accident itself hadn't been dramatic. At least not in the cinematic sense. No explosions. No high-speed chase. Just one distracted driver running a red light while Hayden was driving home after work. The doctors kept repeating the same phrase. Lucky. Lucky the truck hit the passenger side. Lucky the airbags deployed correctly. Lucky nothing happened to his spine. Lucky surgery wasn't necessary. Lucky. Funny how people call you lucky while handing you enough pain medication to make you sleep 14 hours a day. By the time we reached my apartment building, the rain had turned heavier. I parked near the entrance. "I'll grab your bag." "I can." "No." I wasn't even going to finish the sentence. "You were going to say you could carry it." "Maybe." "Exactly." He rolled his eyes. "I hate this." "I know." "I've needed help before, Preston." "I know. But never like this." That sentence stayed with me. Never like this. I walked around to his side and opened the passenger door. He hated every second of getting out. Not because it hurt. Though it obviously did. He hated needing someone to wait while he adjusted the brace. Needing someone nearby in case he lost balance. Needing someone to carry the things he'd always carried himself. Pride is a strange thing. It hurts even when your body already does. Inside the building, he stopped halfway to the elevator. You okay? I asked. He nodded, then shook his head. I feel. He searched for the word. Slow. You had a car crash 4 days ago. I know. So maybe you're allowed. I don't like being allowed. I noticed. We reached my apartment on the 5th floor. Apartment 514. I'd lived there almost 3 years. 1 bedroom. Decent kitchen. Tiny balcony. Big enough for 1 person. Questionable for 2. I unlocked the door. Hayden looked inside. Then looked at me. You cleaned. I always clean. You absolutely do not. I cleaned, today. He grinned. There it is. What? My actual best friend. I thought you said I wasn't polite. You're not. So? You panic clean whenever you're stressed. I don't panic. The couch pillows are symmetrical. The magazines are stacked by size. You alphabetized your spice rack. I sighed. I hate that you noticed. I notice everything. He stepped inside slowly, then stopped in the middle of the living room. For a long moment he just looked around. The apartment smelled faintly like coffee and fresh laundry. A blanket was folded over the couch. I'd moved the coffee table against the wall to make more space. The recliner I'd borrowed from my parents sat near the window. There was even a shower chair waiting in the bathroom. I hadn't thought much about any of it while setting things up. I'd simply done what seemed necessary. Hayden noticed every single detail. You did all this? It wasn't a big deal. It took hours. It wasn't a big deal. He stayed quiet. Then said something so softly I almost missed it. Thanks. That one word carried more weight than anything else he'd said all day. Later that evening, after I'd convinced him to take his medication, he fell asleep in the recliner before dinner was even ready. I stood in the kitchen pretending to cook while stealing glances toward the living room. He looked younger asleep. Less tense. The lines between his eyebrows finally gone. The television played quietly, muted because he dozed off halfway through choosing something to watch. I remembered freshman year. Back when we met. He'd been impossible then, too. He borrowed my charger without asking. Ate half my fries during orientation. Introduced himself by saying, You look like someone who alphabetizes books. I had stared at him. I don't. You thought about it, though. I did. I knew it. That was Hayden. He'd somehow become my closest friend before I'd even realized we were friends. 6 years later. Here he was. Sleeping in my apartment because someone else hadn't looked both ways. Life changes faster than anyone admits. The pasta boiled over. I cursed under my breath. Hayden stirred slightly. Everything okay? Yeah. You sound like someone losing a fight with spaghetti. I am. He opened one eye. I can supervise. I don't need supervision. You absolutely do. I've been cooking longer than you. You also once burned soup. That was one time. It was liquid. I know how soup works. He laughed. A real one this time. Not forced. Not polite. Just Hayden. For the first time since I'd picked him up. The apartment didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt alive again. And somehow, I had the strange feeling neither of us realized that moving him into my apartment was about to change far more than just our daily routines. The first week settled into a routine neither of us had planned. Every morning, I woke up before Hayden. Not because I had to. Because I kept listening for him. The doctors had warned us that recovery wouldn't be smooth. Some mornings he'd wake up feeling almost normal. Others he'd barely make it from the recliner to the bathroom before the pain reminded him exactly what had happened. Wednesday turned into one of the bad mornings. I found him standing in the kitchen with both hands gripping the counter. You okay? He didn't answer immediately. Hayden? Give me a second. I walked over but stopped a few feet away. I'd already learned something important. Helping too quickly only frustrated him. After a long moment, he straightened. Better? Not really. What happened? My leg decided it hates me today. Pain? He nodded. On a scale from 1 to 10? I'm pretending it's a 6. So it's an 8. Probably. Sit. I was making coffee. I'll make coffee. I can still make coffee. You can also barely stand. I resent how observant you've become. I've always been observant. No. What? You've always been quietly observant. And now? Now you're loud about it. I think living with you is changing me. He snorted. That's terrifying. I handed him a mug a few minutes later. He accepted it with his good hand. Thanks. You've been saying that a lot. I've been needing it a lot. Neither of us knew what to say after that. Recovery looked nothing like movies. There were no inspirational montages. No dramatic breakthroughs. Mostly, it looked like boredom. Hayden hated boredom. By Friday afternoon, he'd already reorganized my bookshelf from the recliner. You moved my history books. They were in alphabetical order. They're supposed to be. They're boring. They're books. They should have personality. They're paper. He pointed toward the shelf. I created themes. I walked over. You grouped them by color? An emotional vibe. Emotional. Look. He sounded completely serious. Blue books look optimistic. They're history books. This one is definitely hopeful. It's about World War II. Well, I folded my arms. You've lost your privileges. My decorating privileges? Your bookshelf privileges. You'll thank me eventually. I absolutely won't. You will. I won't. He smiled. You like arguing with me. I tolerate arguing with you. You smile more when you argue. I smile because you're ridiculous. There it is again. What? The face. What face? The one you make when you're trying not to laugh. I don't have a face. You definitely have a face. I threw a couch pillow at him. He caught it one-handed. Attempted assault. I missed on purpose. You absolutely did not. Maybe. He looked strangely pleased. That evening we ordered pizza. Half pepperoni. Half vegetables. Because we'd been having that same argument since we were 19. Vegetables belong on the side. They belong on pizza. They make it sad. They make it balanced. They make it expensive. They make it edible. He took another bite. I feel judged. You should. I survived a car accident. You can survive mushrooms. I don't want to. The delivery guy left. The apartment grew quiet again. Outside, rain tapped softly against the balcony door. Hayden stared at the television without actually watching it. After several minutes he asked, Can I ask you something? You just did. You know what I mean. Go ahead. He kept looking forward. Was it bad? The accident? He nodded. I hesitated. I saw the pictures. My car? Yeah. He swallowed. I don't remember much. Probably for the best. I keep trying to. Why? I don't know. His fingers tightened around the edge of the blanket. I keep thinking. He stopped. What? What if I'd been 2 seconds earlier? I looked at him. What if I'd stopped for coffee? What if I'd left work later? What if... Hayden. He went quiet. You can't do that to yourself. I know. No. I leaned forward. You really can't. He finally looked at me. I've replayed every conversation we've ever had where you drove somewhere. What? I've imagined every possible version where it was you instead. He blinked. I know that's irrational. It is. I still did it. He stared at me. You would have done the same. I didn't answer. Because he was right. Eventually he looked away again. I keep waking up right before the crash. But you don't remember it. I remember enough. Silence filled the room. Then I asked quietly, "What do you remember?" His voice dropped. "The sound. Nothing else. Just that. The sound. Sometimes one memory is enough to haunt you." Saturday morning brought sunshine for the first time all week. I opened the balcony door. Fresh air drifted inside. Hayden looked toward the light. "I miss walking." "You'll walk again." "I know. I mean really walking." He looked out at the street below. "Just deciding to go somewhere. I never realized how much freedom lives in your legs." I sat across from him. "Want to get outside?" He laughed. "In this condition? We have an elevator. We also have 6 steps outside. I'll help." There it is again. "What? You always say that." "Because I mean it." "I know." He rubbed the back of his neck. "It's weird." "What is?" "I've always been the one helping people move. The one fixing furniture. The one carrying groceries. The one everyone calls. And now? Now I can't open a pickle jar." I smiled. "Those jars are impossible. You opened one yesterday. It was emotionally ready." He rolled his eyes. "I hate you." "No, you don't." "No." A tiny smile appeared. "I don't." We made it downstairs 20 minutes later. Slowly. Painfully. One step at a time. The small park across the street suddenly felt much farther away than it ever had before. We sat on a bench. Children played near the swings. A dog chased falling leaves. The world kept moving. Hayden watched all of it quietly. "You know what's strange?" "What?" "I thought surviving would feel." He searched for the word. "Bigger." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. I guess I expected gratitude. Perspective. Some dramatic life-changing revelation. And instead?" He looked at the people walking past. "I'm mostly frustrated that putting on socks takes 10 minutes. I laughed. He looked relieved. "What?" "I thought that sounded awful." "It sounds human." He nodded slowly. "I think everyone expects survivors to become philosophers. Instead, you're angry at socks. They're unbelievably complicated. They've always been complicated." "No." He pointed at his brace. "Now they're personal." We both laughed. Longer this time. Louder. An older woman walking her dog smiled as she passed us. For the first time since the accident, Hayden looked like himself again. Not completely. But enough. Enough that I caught myself staring. He noticed. "What?" "Nothing. You were looking at me." "I was thinking." "Dangerous." "I was remembering." "What?" I smiled faintly. "The first day we met." "Oh no. You stole my fries." "I borrowed them." "You ate them." "I was testing the friendship." "We weren't friends." "We became friends." "You declared we were friends." And apparently that worked." "It clearly did." He leaned back against the bench. "I've never actually asked?" "What? Why did you keep talking to me?" I looked out across the park. Because the real answer surprised even me. "I don't know." "Liar." I smiled. "You made everything louder." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "I spent most of my life overthinking." "You still do." "I know. But then you showed up. And somehow everything felt easier." He looked at me for a long moment. Long enough that I started wondering if I'd said too much. Finally he smiled. "That's probably the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Don't get used to it." "I absolutely will." As we slowly made our way back toward my apartment, I realized something I hadn't let myself think before. Taking care of Hayden wasn't becoming easier because his injuries were healing. It was becoming easier because somewhere along the way, it had stopped feeling like an obligation and started feeling like the most natural thing in the world. By the second week, we had stopped pretending Hayden was just a temporary guest. His charger stayed plugged into the outlet beside the recliner. His hoodie somehow ended up hanging on the back of one of my kitchen chairs. Half the bathroom shelf belonged to him now. Neither of us acknowledged when it happened. It simply did. Monday morning, I walked into the living room to find him staring at his laptop with the kind of expression usually reserved for tax audits. What happened? My boss. That's a sentence, not an explanation. He rubbed his forehead. They want me to start joining meetings again. I thought you already were. I've been answering emails. So? They want cameras on. I frowned. Is that a problem? He looked down at the brace on his leg. I don't want everyone asking questions. They already know you were in an accident. I know. He sighed. I don't want to be the injured guy. I leaned against the kitchen counter. You think that's what they're going to see? For a while. And after that? He shrugged. I don't know. I poured coffee into 2 mugs before answering. They'll see Hayden. The one who interrupts meetings? The one who somehow convinces clients to like him? The one who somehow talks people into impossible deadlines? You make that sound manipulative. It is manipulative. It's persuasive. It's manipulative with better marketing. He laughed. I miss this. What? You making fun of me? I never stopped. No. He smiled into his coffee. I just forgot. Working from my apartment turned out to be more entertaining than productive. I worked in my bedroom. Hayden worked in the living room. Our meetings constantly overlapped. At 11:30, I walked out to refill my water. Hayden was smiling at his laptop. No, he was saying. The design itself isn't the problem. Pause. The problem is Greg made the button orange. Another pause. I know orange is technically a color. I nearly laughed. Hayden noticed me. His eyes widened. He pointed toward the kitchen as if silently ordering me to leave. I leaned against the doorway anyway. Greg, Hayden continued, I'm sure your orange button has a wonderful personality. Another pause. No, that's not what I. The meeting erupted into laughter through his speakers. He muted himself. I hate you. You handled that beautifully. You made eye contact. You were funny. I was trying to stay employed. He unmuted. Sorry, everyone. My roommate reminded me that I should phrase things diplomatically. Someone on the call asked something I couldn't hear. Hayden looked toward me. Then smiled. Yeah. He keeps me honest. He didn't say roommate awkwardly. He said it naturally, without hesitation. For some reason. That made me smile all afternoon. Tuesday brought physical therapy. The clinic wasn't far away. Hayden had been unusually quiet since breakfast. Nervous? No. Liar. I'm selectively honest. That's still lying. He looked out the passenger window. I hate failing. It's physical therapy. It's still failing. You haven't even started. I already know it'll hurt. It probably will. There. He pointed at me. See? I'm not going to lie. I know. I think you need someone who tells you the truth. He looked over. I do. The therapist was kind. Encouraging. Completely unimpressed by Hayden's attempts to joke his way through every difficult exercise. 1 more. I've done 3 more. Then 1 additional one. I liked you 5 minutes ago. I know. After 40 minutes, Hayden looked exhausted. Sweat clung to his forehead. His breathing had changed. His smile hadn't. You survived. Barely. You did well. I did terrible. The therapist shook her head. You did exactly what you're supposed to do. Hayden looked unconvinced. Outside, he lowered himself carefully into the passenger seat. The door closed. Silence. Then, I couldn't even balance. You balanced. For 3 seconds. Last week you couldn't put weight on that leg. I know. You stood. I wobbled. You stood. He rested his head against the seat. I forgot recovery counts inches. It always has. I keep expecting miles. I started the car. You'll get there. He nodded without opening his eyes. I know. But today. He smiled weakly. Today felt like 3 inches. That evening, neither of us wanted to cook. Chinese takeout solved the problem. We ate on the couch while an old action movie played in the background. Halfway through dinner, Hayden suddenly asked, "Can I ask something weird?" "You usually do. What would have happened if we never met?" I blinked. "What?" "Humor me." I thought about it. I probably would have graduated. Got the same job. Moved here. And I would have had fewer arguments about pizza toppings. He nodded. Anything else? I looked at him. The question deserved an honest answer. I think. I hesitated. I would have been lonelier. He stopped eating. You mean after college? I mean during college too. He looked genuinely surprised. I always assumed you had dozens of friends. I knew lots of people. That's different. It is. He stared at his food. You never told me that. You never asked? He smiled faintly. I guess I didn't. After a moment, he spoke again. You know, when I transferred into that dorm, I was terrified. I hid it well. You definitely did. I walked into orientation pretending I belonged. You did look confident. I wasn't. He laughed quietly. I saw you sitting alone with that giant history book. It wasn't giant. It was enormous. It was 400 pages. Exactly. I figured. He looked down at his takeout container. If someone was voluntarily reading 400 pages before classes even started, they probably weren't going to judge me. I stared at him. Seriously? He nodded. I almost walked away. What changed your mind? You looked up. And? You smiled. I did. You probably don't even remember. I didn't. You smiled. So I sat down. He shrugged. The rest sort of happened. Neither of us spoke for a while. Funny. 6 years of friendship. Hundreds of conversations. And we never talked about how it actually began. Wednesday night, around 2 in the morning, I woke to a muffled sound from the living room. At first I thought I'd imagined it. Then I heard it again. A sharp intake of breath. I got out of bed. The apartment was dark except for the faint glow from a streetlight outside. Hayden was awake. Sitting upright. Breathing hard. Hey! He turned so quickly I almost apologized for startling him. You okay? He blinked several times. Yeah. You sure? Bad dream. I walked closer but didn't crowd him. About the accident? He nodded once. I couldn't remember it before. And now? I still can't. He rubbed both hands over his face. But my brain keeps inventing it. I sat on the edge of the other chair. Neither of us spoke. The refrigerator hummed quietly. Cars passed somewhere outside. Finally he said, I hate sleeping. That's new. I know. I closed my eyes. He swallowed. And I wonder if I'll hear it again. I understood immediately. The sound. The only thing he remembered. I don't think I've slept more than 2 hours straight. You should have told me. I didn't want to wake you. I almost laughed. You've been living here 2 weeks. You think waking me up would have bothered me? He looked embarrassed. I don't know. I stood. Come on. What? We're making tea. It's 2 in the morning. I noticed. You don't even like tea. I don't. So why? Because my grandmother believed tea solved everything. And? I think she was wrong. He smiled a little. But it gives people something to do while they're talking. We sat in the kitchen with 2 untouched mugs. Neither of us drank much. Mostly we talked. About nightmares. About fear. About how strange it felt to survive something that still hadn't fully registered. At one point, Hayden looked at me. I've been scared you'll get tired of this. Of what? He gestured vaguely toward himself. The appointments. The medication. The bad moods. The middle of the night conversations. I answered without thinking. I'm not keeping score. His expression softened. I know. No. I met his eyes. I mean it. I'm here because I want to be. He looked away first. You're a good friend, Preston. Something about that sentence lingered after he'd gone back to sleep. Not because it was wrong. Because for the first time, it felt incomplete. I couldn't explain why. I wasn't ready to. But as I lay awake until sunrise, one uncomfortable thought kept returning. Somewhere during the last 2 weeks, I'd stopped looking after Hayden simply because he was my best friend. And I wasn't sure what that meant. The next morning, either of us mentioned the conversation in the kitchen. We didn't need to. Some conversations don't end when people stop talking. They simply settle somewhere between them. Hayden was already awake when I walked into the living room. He was reading. Or pretending to. The same page had been open for at least 10 minutes. Morning. He looked up. Morning. You sleep at all? A little. Liar. This time only a small lie. I'll take the improvement. He smiled faintly. Coffee? Please. I handed him his mug before making my own. For a while we stood in comfortable silence. It felt different now. Not awkward. Not heavy. Just quieter than before. Like we'd both started paying attention to things we'd ignored for years. That afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was finishing work. Mason. One of our college friends. Poker night Friday? Everyone's coming. I stared at the message. Hayden noticed. Everything okay? Mason. Oh. He immediately understood. The group hadn't really seen him since the accident. Mostly because he'd refused. I don't think I'm ready. I wasn't asking. You were thinking it. I was. He looked back toward the window. I don't want everyone looking at me. They'll be happy you're okay. They'll pretend not to notice the brace. They'll ask how I'm feeling every 15 minutes. They care. I know. He sighed. I just don't want to be the reason everyone talks quietly. I leaned against the doorway. They won't. You can't promise that. No. I can promise something else. What? If it gets overwhelming. We leave. He looked at me. Immediately? Immediately. No convincing me to stay? No. No guilt? None. He studied my face for a long moment. Finally he nodded. Okay. Friday evening arrived faster than expected. Hayden changed shirts 3 times. You look fine. I look like someone recovering. You are someone recovering. I preferred looking like someone who wasn't. I watched him struggle to button one cuff with only one fully functional arm. Without saying anything, I stepped closer. Here. I can. I know. He stopped talking. I fastened the cuff. Then the other. For a brief second we were standing much closer than usual. Close enough that I noticed he smelled like cedar soap. Close enough that he noticed I hadn't stepped away yet. Thanks, he said quietly. I nodded. Neither of us moved. Then my phone buzzed. The moment disappeared. Mason's apartment looked exactly the same as it had for years. Too many people. Too much pizza. Not enough chairs. The second we walked in, conversation stopped. Just for a second. Then Mason crossed the room. You idiot. He hugged Hayden carefully. Don't. What? Make me emotional. I wasn't planning to. You absolutely were. Mason stepped back. You look terrible. There he is. Our friendship survives. Hayden grinned. Barely. The room relaxed immediately. Within minutes everyone was arguing over card games exactly like always. No one treated Hayden differently. At least, not in the way he'd feared. They offered him the comfortable chair. made room for his leg, asked how therapy was going once, then moved on. Normal. Exactly what he'd wanted. About an hour later, I looked across the room. Hayden was laughing so hard at one of Mason's stories that he nearly spilled his drink. I hadn't seen him laugh like that since before the accident. Something warm settled in my chest. Mason noticed me watching. He wandered over while Hayden was distracted. "You okay?" "Yeah." "You've been staring at him all night." I blinked. "What?" "You heard me." "I wasn't staring." "You absolutely were." I looked away. "I've just been making sure he's okay." Mason didn't answer immediately. Instead, he smiled in a way I didn't like. "What?" "Nothing." "Mason." "What?" "You have a face." "I do not." "You definitely do." He laughed. "You sound exactly like Hayden." "I'll pretend that's not insulting." He lowered his voice. "You know." "What?" "I've known you two almost 6 years." "So?" "I've never seen either of you spend more than 10 minutes apart at a party." "We're friends." "I know." I folded my arms. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything." "You absolutely are." He shrugged. "I'm just saying. When Hayden smiles." I looked across the room again without thinking. "He usually looks for you." Before I could answer, Hayden looked over, caught my eye, smiled. Exactly like Mason had said. Then waved me over because apparently whatever story he'd been told needed to be repeated immediately. Mason quietly walked away, leaving me standing there with a thought I didn't want. The ride home was peaceful. The city lights blurred across the windshield. Hayden leaned comfortably against the passenger seat. "That helped." "I'm glad." "I almost didn't go." "I know." "I'm glad you talked me into it." I smiled. "I barely had to." "You know what I mean." A few blocks later he spoke again. "I forgot something." "What?" "I miss people." "They miss you too." "I know." He looked outside. It felt. He searched for the word. "Normal." "I think that's what you needed." "Probably." He was quiet again. Then, "You looked happy tonight." I glanced over. "What?" "When everyone stopped treating me like I might break." "I was." He smiled. "I noticed." "You notice everything." "I do." He looked at me thoughtfully. "You've looked tired lately." "I've been fine." "Liar." "I'm selectively honest." He laughed. "I hate when you use my jokes. They're public property." "They absolutely are not." "They are now." He shook his head. "You've changed." "What?" "You joke more." I frowned. "I've always joked." "No." You smiled. "But you didn't joke." "And now?" He looked directly at me. "Now you do." The rest of the drive passed quietly. But his words stayed with me. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had changed. Sunday afternoon brought another therapy session. This one ended better than the last. "You walked farther today." Hayden looked unconvinced. "I limped farther." "You still went farther." The therapist smiled. "Progress doesn't always look impressive while it's happening." Outside the clinic, we decided to stop at a small cafe. Mostly because neither of us wanted to go straight home. It wasn't busy. Just a handful of people reading or working. We found a table near the window. Halfway through our coffee, Hayden suddenly asked, "Can I ask you something?" "You've asked that 4 times this week." "I know." "You could just ask." He wrapped both hands around his mug. "Were you scared?" "About what?" "When they called." I looked down. I hadn't thought about that day in detail since it happened. "My phone rang." I spoke slowly. "Unknown number." "I almost ignored it." Hayden stayed silent. I answered anyway. "And?" "They asked if I knew Hayden Carter." He swallowed. "I remember." I took a slow breath. thinking something terrible had happened before they even finished the sentence. Neither of us spoke. The drive to the hospital. I smiled faintly. I don't actually remember driving. I remember parking. I remember running. I remember trying to convince myself they must have called the wrong Preston. Hayden stared at the table. I'm sorry. I frowned. For what? For putting you through that. You didn't. I got in the car. You didn't cause the accident. I know. But you still had to. He couldn't finish. I reached across the table without thinking. Just enough to rest my hand over his. Nothing more. His fingers froze beneath mine. So did I. He looked confused. What? I got lucky too. His eyebrows pulled together. What do you mean? I almost ignored the call. I answered. I found out you were alive. I smiled gently. I got lucky too. Neither of us moved. The cafe faded into background noise. Conversations. Coffee machines. Music. Everything else disappeared. Hayden looked at our hands. Then back at me. Very quietly he said, I don't know what I would have done without you. The words landed somewhere deep inside me. Much deeper than they should have. I should have answered immediately. Instead, I realized I didn't know which answer was true anymore. Because somewhere between late-night conversations, physical therapy appointments, grocery runs, and ordinary mornings, he had stopped feeling like just my best friend. And for the first time in 6 years, that truth scared me. After that afternoon at the cafe, something shifted. Not in a dramatic way. Nothing changed overnight. Hayden was still recovering. I was still working from home. The apartment was still too small for 2 grown men. But suddenly, I noticed everything. The way he always thanked me before going to bed, even when I told him to stop. The way he instinctively looked for me whenever something funny happened on television. The way the apartment felt strangely empty whenever he was at physical therapy for an hour. I tried convincing myself I was imagining it. I wasn't. Monday evening found us in the kitchen attempting to cook together. Attempting being the important word. You chopped those onions unevenly. I chopped them artistically. They're different sizes. They have personality. They're vegetables. They deserve individuality. I laughed. You've spent too much time on my couch. And you've spent too much time listening to me. He nudged the cutting board toward me. You fix them. I'm not fixing your onions. There are onions. They're your emotional support onions. He looked offended. They're trying their best. I reached for another knife. Move over. I knew you'd cave. I didn't cave. You absolutely caved. I stepped beside him. The kitchen wasn't built for 2 people. Our shoulders brushed. Neither of us moved away. For a moment we both focused on the onions. Or pretended to. Finally Hayden spoke. You know. What? I miss this. Cooking? No. He smiled without looking at me. Living with someone. I stopped chopping. You've had roommates. Not like this. What does that mean? He thought about it. I've had roommates. I've never had. Another pause. Someone who actually noticed when I skipped lunch. I looked back down at the cutting board. I've always noticed. I know. You just never let me. That earned a quiet laugh. No. I didn't. Tuesday brought rain again. The kind that turned the city gray before lunchtime. Hayden sat near the balcony reading while I answered emails. At some point I realized it had gone suspiciously quiet. Too quiet. I walked into the living room. He was asleep. The book rested upside down on his chest. His glasses had slipped slightly down his nose. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows. I stood there longer than necessary. Just looking at him. It wasn't the first time. But this time, I let myself admit why. His hair had gotten longer during recovery. He needed a haircut. There was a tiny scar near his temple that hadn't been there a month ago. His face looked less tired than it had in weeks. Without thinking, I pulled the blanket higher over his shoulder. His eyes opened immediately. Sorry. I didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. You were definitely asleep. I was resting professionally. I smiled. Professional resting? It's a difficult skill. I'm sure. He blinked a couple more times. You covered me up. It was cold. You've become alarmingly domestic. I object. You made soup yesterday. Soup is efficient. You folded my laundry. You were asleep. You labeled leftovers. I like knowing what's inside containers. He grinned. If anyone else did this. What? I'd probably fall in love with them. The sentence escaped so casually that neither of us reacted. For exactly 3 seconds. Then, his smile disappeared. Mine probably did too. He blinked. He laughed awkwardly. I didn't mean. It's okay. No. I mean. He rubbed the back of his neck. That came out wrong. I looked at him. Did it? Or had it simply come out before he'd had time to stop it? Neither of us said another word about it. Instead, I walked back toward my bedroom, closed the door, and stood there staring at the wall. My heartbeat wouldn't slow down. That night I couldn't sleep. Around midnight I gave up and walked onto the balcony. The rain had stopped. The city glowed quietly beneath the clouds. The balcony door slid open behind me. You too? I turned. Hayden stood there carefully balancing on his crutch. You should be sleeping. So should you. He leaned against the doorway. Couldn't. Nightmare? No. He hesitated. My brain. I understand. We stood side by side in silence. The cool air felt good. After several minutes he spoke. Do you ever think life changes too quietly? What do you mean? I always imagine big moments. Graduation. Getting promoted. Moving. He looked out across the sleeping city. But the important stuff just sort of happens. I nodded slowly. You don't notice until you're already living differently. He looked over at me. Exactly. Another silence. Then. I've been thinking. Dangerous. I know. He smiled. About going home. The word hit harder than expected. Oh. My lease ends next month. I know. My leg's getting stronger. I know. I'll probably be okay soon. I know. He looked at me carefully. You don't sound excited. I am. Liar. I looked away. I'm happy you're recovering. But. There it was. The question I didn't want. I'll miss having you around. He smiled softly. I'll miss being here. Neither of us said anything else. Because both of us understood that wasn't what either of us actually meant. The next Saturday, Mason invited everyone over again. Hayden declined immediately. I just went last week. Mason specifically asked for you. He specifically asks everyone. He texted me separately. Hayden frowned. That's suspicious. An hour later we arrived anyway. About halfway through the evening, Mason cornered me in the kitchen while Hayden argued about football with 3 other friends. Can I ask something? I don't like that tone. Humor me. No. He ignored me. Are you in love with him? I nearly dropped my drink. What? You heard me. Where did that come from? You. I have done absolutely nothing. You look at him like he's home. The room suddenly felt much warmer. Mason. I'm serious. We're friends. I know. I've been your friend just as long. He lowered his voice. I've never seen you rearrange your entire life for anyone. He needed help. He did. You would have done the same. I would have visited. I would have driven him places. I would have brought groceries. He folded his arms. You moved your office. You changed your routine. You learned physical therapy exercises. You started cooking actual meals. You smile more. I stared at him. He smiled gently this time. I'm not judging you. I genuinely don't know if you've realized it. Before I could answer, Hayden called from the living room. Preston! What? Come settle this. What now? They think penguins have knees. They do. I know they do. He sounded so offended that everyone started laughing. Without thinking, I smiled and walked straight toward him. Mason didn't follow. He didn't need to. Because as I crossed the room, I realized I hadn't even questioned where I wanted to be. I'd simply gone where Hayden was. And maybe Mason had been right. Maybe. I'd already known the answer long before anyone asked the question. I spent the next 3 days pretending nothing had changed. It was a terrible strategy. Mostly because nothing had changed. Hayden still asked if I wanted coffee every morning. Still complained about physical therapy. Still insisted my taste in movies was historically accurate but emotionally exhausting. The only difference was, now I noticed my own reactions. Every smile stayed with me a little longer. Every laugh sounded different. Every casual touch lingered in my thoughts after it ended. It was exhausting. Wednesday afternoon, Hayden was finally cleared to start walking around the apartment without the crutch. Carefully. His therapist had repeated 3 different times. Hayden interpreted that as a personal challenge. I don't need help. You've said that 6 times. I mean it this time. You meant it the other 6. He stood up from the recliner. Slowly. The brace was smaller now. His movements steadier. Not normal. But closer. I'm walking. You are. I'm actually walking. You are. He took another careful step. Then another. Halfway across the living room he stopped. Not because of pain. Because he was smiling. I forgot what this felt like. I smiled back. I'm proud of you. The words came out quietly. Naturally. Hayden looked at me. For just a second. Something softened in his expression. That means more than you probably realize. Before I could answer, his foot slipped slightly against the rug. Whoa! I reached him instinctively. One hand on his shoulder. The other steadying his arm. He caught his balance immediately. Neither of us moved afterward. We were suddenly standing much closer than either of us had expected. You okay? Yeah. You sure? He nodded. But he wasn't looking at his leg anymore. He was looking at me. So, he said quietly, apparently I still need help. Sometimes. I hate admitting that. I know. He smiled. I'm getting better at it. I noticed. For a long moment neither of us stepped back. Finally Hayden laughed. If anyone walked in right now, they'd assume you almost fell. I did almost fall. There you go. You always make things sound simple. They usually are. No. He looked at me thoughtfully. You make them simple. Later that evening we watched a movie either of us cared about. Or at least the television was on. About 20 minutes in Hayden muted it. Can I ask something? Always. You've been weird. I blinked. What? The last week. I've been normal. You've been Preston normal. Meaning? You've been thinking. I always think. You've been hiding it. I looked down at the remote. I don't know what you're talking about. Liar. I'm selectively honest. He laughed. Again with my jokes. They're still public property. They're copyrighted. By who? Me. I don't remember signing anything. He smiled. Then the smile slowly faded. I'm serious. I know. He leaned forward. Did I do something? The question caught me completely off guard. What? You've looked. He searched for the right word. Far away. I have. You smile. But sometimes. It feels like you're somewhere else. I stared at him. He really did notice everything. No. I said quietly. You didn't do anything. You promise? Yeah. It wasn't exactly a lie. Just not the whole truth. He studied my face for another moment. Then nodded. I'll believe you. That somehow made me feel worse. The following afternoon, while Hayden was showering, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then answered. Hello? Hi, is this Preston Brooks? Yes. This is Melissa from Evergreen Rehabilitation. Immediately my stomach tightened. Is everything okay? Oh, yes. Nothing's wrong. I was just calling because Hayden's latest evaluation came back. I relaxed. Okay. His progress is excellent. I smiled despite myself. That's great. If everything continues like this. She checked something. We expect he'll be fully independent within 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks. I thanked her. Hung up. And stood completely still in the kitchen. 2 to 3 weeks. That was good news. It was exactly what we'd both wanted. So why did my apartment suddenly feel quieter? Hayden walked out a few minutes later, drying his hair with a towel. Who called? The clinic. He smiled immediately. And? They're impressed. Really? Really? He actually laughed. I told you those stupid exercises were working. I know. What else? I hesitated. They think. The words felt unexpectedly difficult. They think you'll probably be ready to go home in a couple weeks. His smile stayed exactly where it was. For a second. Then. Something changed. Oh. You okay? Yeah. He sat down slowly. He looked around the apartment. I hadn't really thought about an actual date. Neither had I. That night we ordered food instead of cooking. Again. Mostly because neither of us seemed interested in pretending everything felt normal. Halfway through dinner, Hayden suddenly said, Can I tell you something embarrassing? You usually do. I've gotten used to this. I looked up. What? Us. He gestured around the apartment. You making coffee. Arguing about vegetables. Watching terrible movies. I smiled. They're excellent movies. They're documentaries about trains. They're fascinating. They're trains. He laughed softly. My point is. He looked down at his plate. This started feeling like home. The words settled heavily between us. Home. I know. The answer escaped before I thought about it. He looked at me. You know? I nodded. I've been feeling that too. Silence. Comfortable. Complicated. Then Hayden quietly asked, Are you going to miss me? I laughed gently. That's not even a fair question. Why not? Because obviously. I wanted to hear you say it. I looked directly at him. Yes. I'm going to miss you. His smile was small. Almost relieved. Good. I frowned. Good? I thought. He looked slightly embarrassed. I thought maybe I'd imagined all of this. Imagined what? He hesitated. Then shook his head. Nothing. I knew him too well. It wasn't nothing. But for once, I didn't push. Because I had a feeling he was getting closer to saying it on his own. And if I was right, then I wasn't the only one who had been living with feelings that no longer fit inside the word friend. The following week arrived with something neither of us had expected. Hope. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet kind. Hayden was walking without the crutch most of the day now. The brace was smaller. His arm had finally come out of the sling. He still moved carefully. But he was moving. Every morning felt a little more normal. Which, strangely enough, made the countdown impossible to ignore. On Thursday, I came out of my bedroom to find Hayden standing in the kitchen making pancakes. I stopped in the doorway. What? He looked over his shoulder. What? You are absolutely not supposed to be cooking. I've been cleared. You've been cleared to walk. I walked to the stove. You are impossible. I've been told. He flipped another pancake with unnecessary confidence. I wanted to surprise you. You could have surprised me with cereal. Cereal lacks romance. I froze. He froze too. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then Hayden laughed awkwardly. I mean, he pointed at the frying pan. Breakfast romance. I folded my arms. I'm almost afraid to ask what that means. It means pancakes. Good. Definitely pancakes. He turned back toward the stove much faster than necessary. I couldn't stop smiling. After breakfast, we decided to clean the apartment. Or rather, Hayden decided. I've officially contributed negative productivity for 6 weeks. You were recovering. I was occupying space. You were healing. I was also occupying space. You still are. He pointed a sponge at me. Exactly. I laughed. So today, he announced dramatically, I'd become useful. You've always been useful. I alphabetized your spices. That was deeply controversial. It was visionary. We split the apartment in half. I handled the bedroom. He insisted on the living room. About 20 minutes later, I heard aloud, Preston? I walked out. What happened? He stood in front of the highest kitchen cabinet. I forgot you're tall. Okay. The glasses are up there. So? I can't reach. I looked at the cabinet. Then at him. You've asked for help. I have. Voluntarily. I have. Without arguing. I'm trying something called growth. I reached up and grabbed the glasses. He accepted them. This is humiliating. This is cabinets. You don't understand. I do. No. He smiled. You've always been able to reach everything. I laughed. That's your complaint? It is today. I'll take it. By evening, the apartment looked cleaner than it had in months. Hayden collapsed onto the couch. I'm exhausted. You washed 2 windows. They were emotionally difficult windows. I'll notify them of your bravery. I appreciate that. We sat quietly for a while. The television played softly in the background. Eventually, Hayden spoke. You know. What? I was thinking about going back to my apartment this weekend. There it was. The sentence we'd both been avoiding. I kept my eyes on the television. Oh. I should probably see what shape it's in. Probably. My landlord texted yesterday. I remember. He says everything's fine. I'm sure it is. Silence. Then. You don't have to sound like someone just canceled Christmas. I looked over. I don't. You do. I'm just. I searched for the right words. Getting used to the idea? He nodded slowly. So am I. Saturday afternoon we drove to Hayden's apartment. It felt strange parking outside the building. Almost like visiting someone else's life. I haven't seen this place in. He frowned. 7 weeks. I helped carry a small bag upstairs. This time. He climbed the stairs himself. Slowly. But without stopping. I did it. You did. He looked ridiculously proud. You know. What? I hated these stairs. You still do. I do. But today. He smiled. They felt different. He unlocked the apartment door. The room smelled closed up. Dust floated through the afternoon sunlight. Everything looked exactly as he'd left it. Coffee mug still in the sink. Jacket over the chair. A pair of sneakers beside the door. Life paused in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. Hayden stood completely still. I forgot. What? It still looks like the day before. I nodded. Neither of us moved for a while. Eventually he walked farther inside. Slowly touching familiar things. The bookshelf. The kitchen counter. The back of the couch. Almost like proving they were real. I thought I'd be excited. Aren't you? I don't know. He turned toward me. It feels. He smiled sadly. Smaller. I looked around. The apartment hadn't changed. But somehow, he had. We spent an hour opening windows and wiping away dust. By the time we finished, the place felt alive again. Hayden stood in the middle of the living room. So, I waited. I could move back. You could. He nodded. I probably should. You probably should. Neither of us sounded convinced. He laughed quietly. We're terrible at this. We are. I keep waiting for you to tell me not to leave. The words hit me harder than I expected. I looked directly at him. And if I did? His smile disappeared. I don't know. I think. He took one slow breath. I'd want to know why. Silence filled the apartment. Outside, someone laughed in the parking lot. A door slammed somewhere downstairs. Life continued. Inside, everything had stopped. I took a step toward him. Hayden. He didn't look away. I've been trying very hard not to say something. His heartbeat seemed almost visible in the way his chest rose. Me too. I smiled faintly. That doesn't make this easier. No. It really doesn't. He looked down for a second. Then back at me. I kept telling myself. His voice had become almost impossibly quiet. That I only didn't want to leave because you took care of me. I swallowed. But that's not it. No. It isn't. Another step. Now only a couple of feet separated us. I started noticing things. He smiled nervously. The way I look for you whenever something funny happens. The way every room feels different when you're not in it. The way your apartment stopped feeling like somewhere I was staying. And started feeling like somewhere I belong. Every word sounded frighteningly familiar. Because I'd been thinking the same things. For weeks. I thought I was ruining our friendship. He let out a shaky laugh. I thought exactly the same thing. He stared at me. Then shook his head with an incredulous smile. We really are idiots. The worst. We've spent weeks pretending. I know. I kept waiting for the feeling to disappear. It didn't. No. His eyes met mine again. It just got bigger. The apartment was completely silent now. No television. No conversations. Just two people who had spent 6 years becoming best friends. And 7 weeks becoming something neither of them had planned. Hayden smiled first. Small. Nervous. Hopeful. So, I think. He laughed softly. I'm in love with my best friend. My chest tightened. Not with fear. With relief. Because I'd been carrying those same words alone for far too long. I smiled. You have terrible timing. He blinked. What? You waited until you're healthy enough to move out. He laughed so hard he had to lean against the kitchen counter. I did, didn't I? You absolutely did. He looked at me again. His smile gentled. So, I took the last step between us. I think. I couldn't help smiling too. I'm in love with mine too. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Neither of us rushed anything. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was peaceful. Like we'd finally stopped fighting the truth. Hayden looked at me with the same expression he'd worn the day I picked him up from the hospital. Only now, there wasn't fear in his eyes. Just certainty. I guess, he said quietly. Home wasn't really this apartment after all. I smiled. No, it wasn't. And somehow, standing there in the place he'd been so eager to return to, we both realized that home had quietly become somewhere else entirely. We didn't leave Hayden's apartment right away. Neither of us seemed interested in breaking whatever had just happened. For 6 years, we'd never run out of things to say. Now the silence somehow felt more honest than words. Hayden leaned back against the kitchen counter, shaking his head with a quiet laugh. I cannot believe we almost let this end because of Elise. I smiled. To be fair, we're both spectacular overthinkers. He pointed at me. No. You are. I've been living with you. It's contagious. I knew it. He looked around his apartment again. Then his smile slowly softened. You know what's funny? What? I spent weeks convincing myself I couldn't tell you because I didn't want to lose my best friend. I nodded. I did the same thing. And instead, he looked directly at me. I almost walked away from the person I wanted to come home to. The sentence settled warmly somewhere deep inside my chest. Not because it was dramatic. Because it sounded exactly like Hayden. Simple. Honest. No rehearsed speech. Just the truth. We locked the apartment and headed downstairs. This time, Hayden took the stairs without stopping once. At the bottom, he turned around and looked back up. I think that's the last time. What? I'll ever be afraid of these. I smiled. I'm proud of you. He laughed. You've said that a lot lately? I know. I don't think I'll ever get tired of hearing it. Outside, the afternoon sun had finally broken through the clouds. For the first time in weeks, the air felt warm. We started walking toward my car. Halfway there, Hayden slowed down. Leg okay? Yeah. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Open. Completely unguarded. I can do something now. What? Without saying another word, he reached for my hand. Carefully. Almost uncertainly. Like he wanted to give me every chance to pull away. I didn't. Our fingers fit together naturally. It felt strangely familiar. Like we'd skipped straight past awkwardness into something we'd been approaching for years without realizing it. Hayden looked down for a second. Then smiled. I've wanted to do that for a while. So have I. We continued walking. Slowly. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. When we got back to my apartment, everything looked exactly the same. The blanket was still folded over the couch. The coffee mugs from that morning were still in the sink. His book still rested on the arm of the recliner. Nothing had changed. And somehow, everything had. Hayden looked around the living room. So, I guess this raises an important question. I laughed. Already? Very important. Go ahead. He folded his arms dramatically. Am I still sleeping in the recliner? I stared at him for a second. Then burst out laughing. You waited until now to ask that? I've had excellent self-control. You absolutely have not. I've had acceptable self-control. Better. He smiled. I'm serious. I rubbed the back of my neck. I think we don't have to figure everything out tonight. He nodded immediately. I like that answer. We've already rushed enough by waiting 6 years. That's a very confusing sentence. You understood it. I did. He walked over to the couch and sat down. For a while we simply talked. About everything we'd never admitted. The first time each of us had started noticing something different. How often we'd almost said something. How many opportunities we both quietly ignored because we were too afraid of changing the friendship. You know when it started for me? Hayden asked. I thought it was after the accident. It wasn't. When? He smiled. Last spring. What? You got the flu. I blinked. I had a fever for 3 days. I know. I brought soup. You also yelled at me because I answered work emails. They could wait. I remember. I drove across town 3 nights in a row. You did. He laughed softly. I got home after the 3rd night. And my sister asked why I looked happier after taking care of someone with the flu. I stared at him. I told her she was ridiculous. He smiled. Turns out she wasn't. I laughed. My turn? Please. I think. I looked toward the balcony. It was before the accident. His eyebrows lifted. When? Remember when I got promoted? Of course. Everyone congratulated me. You deserved it. I know. But afterward. I looked back at him. The only person I wanted to tell first was you. He smiled slowly. I left the office early. I remember. I brought takeout. You brought the expensive burgers. They seemed appropriate. They were excellent burgers. They were. We both laughed. Then fell quiet again. The comfortable kind. The kind we'd always shared. Only now. It meant something new. A week later, Hayden officially ended his lease. Are you absolutely sure? The landlord asked. Hayden smiled. Yeah. I found somewhere else. That evening, he carried the last box into my apartment. This time, either of us called it moving in. Because the truth was, he'd never really left. I watched him place the box beside the bookshelf. The spices are still alphabetical. I know. I've accepted defeat. I never thought I'd hear those words. I've grown. You have. He looked around. My mugs are already here. They've been here for weeks. My hoodie, too. You left it. I think I did that on purpose. I think you did. He walked over to the balcony. The city stretched out beneath us, glowing in the fading evening light. I used to think home was a place, he said quietly. The right apartment. The right street. The right city. I joined him. And now? He looked at me. Now I think it's a person. The words were simple. But they felt bigger than any dramatic declaration ever could. I smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. He laughed. You know. What? You really did panic clean before I moved in. I absolutely did not. The spice rack. The symmetrical pillows. The color-coded pantry. I was preparing. You were panicking. I was strategically preparing. He shook his head, laughing. I love you. The words came as naturally as every conversation we'd ever had. No hesitation. No fear. No uncertainty. Just the truth. I smiled. I love you too. For a long moment we stood together on the balcony, watching the city settle into evening. 6 years earlier, Hayden had stolen half my fries because he thought I looked lonely. 7 weeks earlier, I'd driven him home from the hospital because I couldn't imagine him facing recovery alone. Neither of us had realized those ordinary moments were quietly leading us here. Not because of one grand event. Not because of one perfect confession. But because real love had grown the same way our friendship had. One shared meal. One late-night conversation. One inside joke. One ordinary day at a time. Looking back, the accident hadn't created our story. It had simply forced us to stop pretending we were living separate ones. And as Hayden slipped his hand into mine, I realized something that made me smile. The apartment hadn't become quieter after he moved in. It had become complete.